The creative journey is hard, but I think for most artists, this is the hard we have to pick, because the other option is denying ourselves our creativity for our whole lives. And that is a pain that I think is exquisite. And I think creatives understand that. We've got to choose our hard. I think it's hard to understand the power of art because it impacts us in so many ways. When you take art, we see hundreds and hundreds of physiological responses. And so it's almost hard for me to really sit down and convince you of it, because impact is so amazingly large, it's almost hard to believe.
The silence and even any negative feedback that you receive along the way, that could inform your strategy, the things that you do to actually get closer to what you want as an artist, as a creator. So it does serve a purpose.
Silence is always a part of the creative journey. It is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It is a part of this journey. I just want you to remember that there is nothing wrong with you. I promise you, you are in such good company if you are currently navigating the silence. When art is very human, it kind of comes back to what I was saying before about how we want this art to be like free of any bad intentions. It's like, you can't make art free of bad intentions. We're humans. We're going to put all of our different intentions into our art. Like, it's a messy, gritty, weird, beautiful human process. I need anyone listening to stop waiting. Like, the title is yours to claim now. And I say no more waiting. They're trying to keep you small and quiet. And it is your job, artist, to pursue your creative calling with all the magic that you have, with all this unique ability that you have. I need you to stop waiting.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Creativity is defined as the ability to use imagination or original ideas to produce something new. According to this definition, everyone, including you, has a creative side. We all have vibrant and imaginative minds that can generate fresh and unique ideas. However, societal beliefs often lead us to think that art is undervalued or inaccessible to most people. To challenge these misconceptions about artistic expression and to create a space where everyone's creativity is celebrated, I've invited Amie McNee. Amie McNee is an author, speaker, and creative coach. In addition to her historical fiction, she has written 4 much-loved books, all of which discuss the realities and magic of leading a creative life. Amie is known for speaking, teaching, and coaching artists all over the world and helping them achieve their creative dreams. In this empowering discussion, Amie will not only explore the various challenges that creatives encounter, but also offer transformative guidance and mindsets. She will encourage you to take your art seriously and reach new heights in your creative journey. Hello, Amie. How are you doing today?
I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to be honest and say I've had like a low energy, kind of lethargic kind of day, but this is exactly what I needed. And I'm so excited to dive into some juicy topics with you.
Yeah, me too. And in fact, I too have been having a lethargic day. I've not had a lot of sleep last night. It's one of those days. But thanks to the power of chai, I'm awake and ready for you today.
Goodness. Thank goodness.
So, Amie, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Today, we're going to be diving into one of my favorite topics, and that is creativity and its power when it comes to expanding our mind and opening our hearts. And in your book, We Need Your Art, you explore this subject in depth, and you offer a wealth of valuable tools to help people express their creative voice and also overcome creative blocks. And I think this is exactly the kind of inspiration we all need today. And I also love how candid you were about your own struggles and about your vulnerabilities as a creator. That truly struck a chord with me because I too could identify with so many of those. So I just want to start out by acknowledging just how wonderful this book is.
Thank you. I mean, that I can't tell you as an author, like that just means the whole world to me. I'm so, so grateful. But you're right, like it's very difficult going on this journey of pursuing a creative calling, and we deserve a lot of support. And I couldn't write this book without being candid about how vulnerable and how hard a lot of this journey has been. I don't lived this life and not written and not made art, but it came at a cost, and when we dare to chase our creative calling, it comes with a lot of judgment, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of rejection, a lot of pain. And I wanted to write a book that took care of creatives doing the brave thing. And that's exactly what We Need Your Art is.
Yeah, and you've done a marvelous job of it.
Thank you.
But I want to start out by knowing the inspiration behind this book. And in what ways does this piece reflect on your own personal journey and everything that you've been through?
This book is written for a past version of me. And a version of me now, because I think no matter how in quote unquote successful we get, we still need to come back to the basics. We still need to have these reminders again and again and again. But I've been recording my creative journey for 10 years, and I've put everything that I've learned and everything that I've experienced into this book, into this one beautiful little creative Bible. But essentially I wrote it to the 22-year-old Amie who was desperately trying to write her stories, desperately trying to figure out how to make writing a full-time gig, and really truly struggling and suffering and feeling so much shame. And so this book is dedicated to her and to any other creative who feels incredibly lost, incredibly unseen, misunderstood, as they do this beautiful thing and make art.
That is a beautiful answer, and I can understand like how difficult this journey might have been for you. But I'd love for you to tell us more specifics about were there any pivotal experiences that kind of set you off on this path?
Yeah, I mean, so as I said, I'm an author that's my craft. My art is writing stories. So I write mostly historical fiction, although I've been dabbling in a bit of sci-fi, a bit of like modern romance. I'll write any kind of story. But I knew as soon as I left school, really, that I wanted a life that was a little different to what I think everyone expected from me. I wanted a life of storytelling, of the arts, of creating, of playing. But everyone around me was realizing they had to get a real grown-up job and they had to do serious things. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm just like a little bit further behind my friends. Maybe I'll grow up eventually. But as the years went on and I did all these, normal good jobs, I was a good girl, I was like, this ain't it. This can't be it. I want a life that is filled with art, filled with storytelling. I want an exciting life that sparkles. And I felt a huge amount of shame for that because I thought something was wrong with me. I thought, why can't you just be a regular adult? Why can't you just grow up, get over the fact that you want to write books and just go and have a job in marketing and not be a little bitch about it? Like I needed myself I was like, grow up, grow up, grow up. I was hurting myself. I said those words to me and I was squashing that creative part of me. And there was no telling her what to do anyway. I was so determined to tell stories and to write books that I did it. But I just did it with this cloud of shame hanging over me. I did it secretly. I did it with this feeling of don't let anybody know that you're doing this or taking this seriously because that's embarrassing. And then I sent my manuscripts off to publishers, and what happened? Hundreds and hundreds of rejections. Celine, like I have hundreds and hundreds of rejections. And I felt not only embarrassed for even trying, but now I was being rejected. And I was like, this is so embarrassing because I gave it a go and apparently I suck. And again, the shame just got deeper and deeper and deeper until I fell into a really, really bad depression. I didn't like myself. I thought I was a loser. I thought I was a child that couldn't grow up. I thought I was embarrassing. And everyone in my community was very worried about me because why can't Amie just find her path? Like she's not making any money. She keeps having to ask for help. Something's wrong with Amie. But what was wrong with me was that I had this beautiful, holy desire to pursue creativity. And we don't live in a world that supports those who want to chase the arts. And I had a big turnaround moment when I hit rock bottom. My book had been picked up by a publisher, but then got dropped. I got fired from my job and I just was like, I'm done. And so all I had every day was, I moved in with my partner's parents because I couldn't afford anything. And I just said, every day I'm going to journal. That's going to be my one thing that if I do it, like I've won the day. And journaling was actually the thing that changed my life.
What is it that gave you that sense of courage and that impetus to keep going on despite all these failures and people around you saying, hey, grow up, this is not going to work, get a real job? What was it within you that kept you going?
Whenever anyone asks me this, Celine, I go, it was either faith or unbelievable stubbornness. And I have this personality that really doesn't like to be told what to do. I have that archetype of the rebel that's like deep in me. And I think a lot of artists have that rebel archetype. Don't tell me what to do. I want, like, we've got that drive that, like, I don't want to do it the way you're telling me to do it. Like, that's the artist spirit. And so even though I was being told left, right, and center, this is not a good path to go down, Amie. No one makes it as an author. Everyone gets rejected. Nobody can make any money in this field. Grow up, get a real job. All of these narratives were coming at me. But that little rebel archetype that sat within me was like, no, I want this. I'm here to tell stories. And this is the stuff that started coming out in my journal, this incredibly determined voice. I'm here to tell stories. I know that my creative calling is with me for a reason. I will make this work somehow. And through writing each day, I was able to weave new narratives that kept me grounded, that kept me focused, and that allowed me to take up more and more space as an author.
So journaling was one of the practices that really helped you. And just that kind of self-talk and just your willfulness and your stubbornness to just push through everything that's going against you.
Yeah. I when I started journaling, it was just like a stream of conscious. This was my internal monologue. And I was looking at the way I was speaking to myself and I was like, this is horrendous. You know, the way I was treating myself was very, very poor. You're so lazy. That was a massive story that I had. You're so lazy. Why can't you just be like everybody else? Like, there's something wrong with you. You're embarrassing. You're so, you know, you're like a little child. Like, this is how I would speak to myself. And I saw that on the pages of my journal. And it was very confronting to understand that that's what I was living with every day. That was the internal monologue I was always living with, one of cruelty, really. And so I brought this new voice in, and she kind of just appeared on the page one day, like this very gentle but determined voice that said, no, this is what you're here for.
And I think there are so many harmful misconceptions when it comes to creativity, and you've actually named a few of them right now. What are some of the things that we can do to bypass those and kind of replace it with more empowering beliefs?
I think if we start with this beautiful archetype of the rebel, it can really help. I think we need to understand that this world would much rather you not be an artist. There are systems at play here which would much rather you not be creative. It would rather you, Celine, not have an incredible podcast. There's systems at play that want us quiet and compliant. Just go do the work that we want you to do for somebody else, and don't make too much fuss. The artist is not here to do that. The artist is here to start the podcast, begin the business, take up space, tell our stories, use our voices. And so if we can settle into this idea that when you hear those cultural expectations of, you know, don't be weird, don't be cringe, just stay silent, go, I rebel against that. I refuse it. I will not have it. And understanding that these things, we can always use them as ways to become powerful if we can embrace that rebel archetype. As soon as you hear your mother say, I just really wish that you could take life more seriously because I don't know how painting is going to pay the bills. You bring that to yourself and you say, I am here to make impact with my art. You do not understand the journey that I am on. Watch me thrive. And I think a huge amount of my journey has been turning these narratives upside down and claiming them for myself and using them as an energy source to pursue my creativity.
Wow, that's powerful. And do you find that sometimes artists get trapped in the idea of using their art as a way solely to make money or to get famous? Because that does happen quite frequently these days, especially in the world of content creation and people who want to become influencers and things like that. They can fall into that trap of being like, okay, I want to win the popularity contest by just creating stuff and putting it out there without really having the right intentions, you know?
I have a surprise answer to this. And that is that I don't think we can ever have pure intentions when we create art. I don't think there's such a thing as having a pure piece of art that had no expectations, that was so sanctified and so clean that like you had put nothing upon the art. We're human beings, and when I create, sometimes I create and I think about what my audience might like. When I create my stories, sometimes I do think about, will this suit the market? Because we're human beings, like we will always put our biases and our complexities into our art. We can't keep art pure of our intentions. We do need to be careful that we are not only creating just to please, just to win the popularity contest. We need to be careful that our art is not just a vehicle for money, because these things are not sustainable and they won't delight you. Like the creative process just won't be fun anymore because you're creating for them,
Exactly.
not for you. So we do need to be careful there, but I am hesitant about this idea of like pure art. Like artists make stuff that is worth money, and you're allowed to think about money as you create things. It's just making sure there's this balance here, whilst also holding the truth that human art will always be messy art and will always be filled with a lot of our complexities and nuances, and that's totally okay.
So how do we strike the balance between staying true to our art and just allowing ourselves to allow, I guess, the inspiration to flow versus really just thinking about the market and what people's expectations are, what our audience expectations are? How do we achieve that balance?
My like very simple question is, when you create, like, are you having fun? Like, are you enjoying this process? Because if you are, then there's something intrinsic. There's something that you are delighting in. Like there's something that's coming from within the artist. If you're having an enjoyable time or a satisfying time, or if you're very interested in the creation process. And I think that's a good sign that you are both maybe and probably co-creating with a potential audience, or you're thinking about different intentions on how you want your piece of art to impact the world, but you're also enjoying it. So it's a co-creation. You haven't outsourced your creativity to your audience. You haven't outsourced your creativity to finances. It's like, yeah, you get to create with your audience. It's a co-creation process. If you're finding yourself lethargic, like consistently lethargic, sometimes we'll have bad days where we just can't be bothered. Art isn't always fun. But if you're finding yourself consistently like, this just isn't lighting me up anymore, or you find yourself consistently avoiding the creative process because it's not calling your name, you need to start asking, okay, is it because I'm only creating to please somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. I mean, follow the inspiration, because if it's not there, then you have nothing that's going to fuel you.
Yeah. It should be exciting. It should be delightful. I think artists, especially with social media, we get caught in that audience capture pattern of, oh, that piece of art did really well, so I need to make more of that piece of art. And that's a perfectly normal thing to do, but make sure it still serves you, the artist.
Yeah.
Make sure that it still delights you, the artist, because otherwise you'll just start making for everybody else and you will burn out. You will not enjoy you will tarnish your creative practice. And we need to take care and protect our creative practice because it's a very sacred thing.
It's so true. I mean, if you get trapped by the metrics of success, you can just lose your whole identity as an artist. I mean, I know that as a podcaster, for a while, I was pretty hung up on the number of downloads and number of views of my videos, especially in the initial stages. But then I really found that it was squelching not only my skills, but it was also making me feel, I don't know, it made me look at podcasting in a different way. You know, I didn't see it as a place where I could really play, where I could interact with really smart people. I started feeling a sense of pressure, like performance pressure, and I did not like that, because it really showed. You know, I could hear it in my voice, I could see it in my body language. So I had to be very cautious about that.
And look at the way that you identified that. Like, that's the perfect way of understanding that you were out of alignment. I think we get so scared of having bad emotions or feeling a certain way, but it's such a good way to tell, okay, well, this isn't serving me. Like, if you start feeling a certain way about your creative process, just like Celine said, she was not feeling good about the podcast, like, pay attention. Like, why is that? Like, are you just creating to please? Are you creating just for the metrics? Are you creating only for the money? How can you bring some of that, reclaim some of that energy for you, the artist? Because at the end of the day, like, this is you and your art. Like, it's so intimate, it's so personal. Like, make sure that this is delighting you. And I love that you use the word play, because it should be a playful practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. Okay, Amie, I'm curious to know, how do you define an artist? Because there's so many misconceptions people have about what really makes an artist. Because nowadays, really anyone is a creator in their own right.
Yeah.
But what, according to you, constitutes, an art, a person who creates art? Like, what do they do?
I am so determined to take the word artist off the pedestal, because I think it's been steeped in a history of elitism and of people who feel like you have to have a certain education to call yourself an artist. You have to be a certain type of artist to call yourself an artist. You have to be working with paintbrushes. You have to be trained by certain people. You have to be shown in galleries. We've had all of these rules around claiming the title of artist, when to me, like, an artist is someone who makes something to connect. And that could mean podcasting. That could mean you're a booktuber on YouTube. That could mean you make little clay mushrooms and you sell them to your local village. Like, there doesn't need to be rules about who is and isn't an artist. Are you making stuff? Cool. You're an artist. Like, let's claim that word. It is not only for the special few. And I speak to so many creatives who really struggle to identify with these words. The same goes to the author, or even like painter. Like, we don't want to claim these words because we don't feel like we've earned them. But that's because we've come from a society that has told you a story that you need to earn these titles, preferably by someone giving you the title. So people don't feel like they can call themselves authors until a publishing house has said, I pick you. And so we retain these titles until they are handed to us by someone who probably works in an office, who has a lot of money. But the reality is we have to be claiming those titles for ourselves before anybody else wants to give them to us. And when we claim those titles, we become the thing, and we become more of the thing, I think. We underestimate the power of names and the power of titles. And so I'm constantly pestering creatives to put the title artist in your bio. Claim it. See what it feels like to just call yourself artist, because I think it's a lot more powerful than people think.
So kind of getting tethered to that identity can make all the difference.
100%. If you're calling yourself artist, you're much more likely to be showing up and doing your art, rather than if you're tottering around the title and saying, oh, maybe I'm a painter, but maybe I'm not a painter, maybe I'm a photographer, but no. If you call yourself photographer, show up like a photographer. And I think it really helps you enact change in your life.
Yeah, I think we wait to hit certain milestones before we can anoint ourselves and be like, yes, now we're an artist, now we're an actor, now we're a singer. I think people wait until they get that coveted sort of position, or that role, or it could be anything that they have in mind,
yes.
That award, or that publishing deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's stop waiting. I need anyone listening to stop waiting. The title is yours to claim now. And I want you to claim it with the spirit of rebellion, because again, you've lived in a society that says you have to wait for that. And I say no more waiting. They're trying to keep you small and quiet. And it is your job, artist, to pursue your creative calling with all the magic that you have, with all this unique ability that you have. And I want you to do it now. I need you to stop waiting.
But it can be hard if you're hearing crickets.
You're
putting your stuff out there. You know what I mean? And you also know that, generally speaking, the odds are against you. I mean, what percentage of creatives actually earn a full-time living? And I mean, let's be real here. The odds are definitely against them. And I'm not saying that they can't be successful, but knowing that they would need to put in, even if they put in a lot of work, sometimes they may not get the thing that they're seeking, the recognition or the money or whatever. So what do you have to say about that?
I have so much to say about that, Celine.
Okay.
The first thing is, as well, of course, the creative journey is hard, and there are many systems in place, especially if you want to go traditionally successful. So I'm talking about being picked by music industry, like music producers, being picked by gatekeepers, so publishers, agents, acting guilds, this kind of shit. Sorry. Then it does make the journey extra hard, because then we're demanding luck get involved then. And so I never want to negate how hard it is. It is incredibly challenging. But I think for most artists, this is the hard we have to pick, because the other option is denying ourselves our creativity for our whole lives. And that is a pain that I think is exquisite. Like, it is a spiritual, harm to deny ourselves art when we know that that's something we want. So for me, it's about choosing our hard, and the hard creative path was always going to be the journey I took, because sitting in an office pretending I wasn't an author was exquisitely painful for me. And I think creatives understand that. Like, we've got to choose our hard. The second thing I want to say is that whilst it's true, again, this is difficult, especially if you want to go through gatekeepers, it's also never been a better time to be a professional creative, ever. We are very fortunate to be living in this era where we have so much access to taking up space without permission, i.e. the internet. We don't need anyone to approve us or pick us in order to take up space. And I want us to just recognize that we are living in the time of the artist. We are living in the time of the creator. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it does mean that you've got a frickin' shot. And then thirdly, I want to address the silence, because all artists will navigate silence. All artists will navigate times when they put their whole heart out there. They share their book. They share that piece they've been working on for years. They ask to be seen, and they are not seen. And there is crickets. And this pain for me was the hardest thing I've had to navigate ever. It was agonizing to put myself out there again and again and again, whether it was hundreds of Instagram posts, hundreds. I've been on Instagram for ages, and it was hundreds of Instagram posts that I had to put out there with no one seeing them, no one responding. I've got hundreds of book rejections, and hundreds more where publishers just didn't even give me didn't reply. They just ghosted me. Silence is always a part of the creative journey. It is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It is a part of this journey. I just want you to remember that there is nothing wrong with you. Think of your most favorite creator. They have put themselves out there and had no one respond. I promise you, you are in such good company if you are currently navigating the silence. And that's not to say that I can make it feel any better. It does suck. But please know that you're not alone as you navigate this. And when I think back to Amie, who navigated the silence for years, I think about how I owe everything to her. She thought there was no momentum. She thought that there was absolutely nothing going on. She thought nobody was seeing her. She thought that absolutely there were no consequences from taking up space in the way she did. But I owe everything to her. Those steps that I thought there was silence in response, and those steps that I thought went nowhere, very slowly over a decade, they took me here, where I'm writing and creating full time and being seen regularly. And so I owe everything to the artists who navigated the silence. And I think sometimes that can help if you are currently navigating silence, to know that maybe there's a future version of you looking back right now and saying, thank you so much for enduring this incredibly hard time, because it actually did take me somewhere.
That is so encouraging and powerful, Amie. Thank you for that. I was also thinking that the silence and even any negative feedback that you receive along the way, that could inform your strategy and the things that you do to actually get closer to what you want as an artist, as a creator. So it does serve a purpose.
It does. I mean, if I hadn't had silence or rejections in response to all of my books, I would have never chosen to self-publish. And at the time, I thought self-publishing was the epitome of failure.
Yeah, we all.
But what I realized, which is the narrative, right? Oh my God, you had to pick yourself. No one chose you. You had to pick yourself.
Oh my goodness.
There is such a strong narrative around that.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that I thought it was the moment of failure, but it was the moment of the beginning of my success. My self-published books make me a beautiful living. They allowed me to become an author. They allowed me to connect with my audience. What they really did was they were the moment where I said, I choose me. And I had not been choosing myself. I had been waiting to be chosen. I was begging people to see me.
Yes.
But when I said, I'll do this on my own, I said, I choose me. And every day I had been rejecting myself quietly. No, you're not good enough. You're not good enough to take up space. But when I put those books out there by myself on my own terms, I was saying to myself, I believe in you, and I believe in the stories that you have to tell, and I think they're worth being out there. And so self-publishing was an incredible business decision, but it was also incredible, like spiritual, mental health, like physical, like fucking decision, because I was able to take up space because I had chosen to take up space.
Wow. You chose to believe in you versus waiting for other people to believe in you and your work. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You hit the nail. You hit the nail on that one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people struggle to do that. They really do. They're waiting for someone to approve them. And not just creators, I think even entrepreneurs, anyone who, because entrepreneurship is...
it's an art, baby.
It's an art.
Yeah.
So all these principles apply to them as well, because they too probably hear crickets when they're approaching investors. And
to me, entrepreneurship is an art. I see the two so interlinked. But yeah, a question I ask people regularly is, right now, are you waiting for someone to give you permission to do something? And really look through your life and look at where you're waiting for permission. And then ask yourself, well, could I just give myself permission? And there will be resistance because your ego is going to hark up and say, well, if you do it yourself, it won't be as good. Well, if you do it yourself, it's going to look silly. If you'll look stupid, you'll look like nobody else wanted you. But really examine those narratives and recognize the power of saying, I back myself. Before anybody else backs me, I back myself. There is nothing more beautiful than being your first fan.
Yeah. You know what comes to mind? And I know this is a fictional character, but I'm thinking of Joey Tribbiani from Friends.
Yes.
Like how he was just showing up for auditions, not even like sometimes, roles that he was not even suitable for, but he would somehow try to wing it and be like, hey, I can do this. I'm qualified. And his other friends are like, really? Like, but I think even though he was, meant to be a bit silly, but I think that bravado and that just like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I'm going to go for it. Who knows? Like, I might fall flat in my face, but at least, I'm going to put myself out there.
Yes, I love that. He's my favorite Friends character. I think there's something about him that is so beautiful and lighthearted. And I think, I didn't know we were going to take lessons from Joey Tribbiani today, but I actually think there's a lot of lessons to learn from him. He doesn't take it too seriously. He doesn't hold too tightly. And I think artists can hold very tightly. We'll send the manuscript out to a publisher and then, clicking out emails, watching every minute of the day. We cling very tight to these things where I think that causes a lot of pain. And if we can let go and say, whatever happens, happens. Like, I am here to create, but how I end up being successful, who knows? Rather than like tightly gripping hold of every single way that you put yourself out there. Because when we are so obsessed with the next Instagram post and we monitor everything and we are hyper vigilant about what we're sharing, it's exhausting. And it means that the silence really hurts. And the silence is inevitable. We will all navigate it. I will say it again.
I remember that Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, was it Big Magic? Is that the title?
Yeah, Big Magic.
She talks about how not relying on your art for a paycheck in the initial stages is a very smart move. Like having a day job or at least a part-time job or other sources of income to help you pay the bills can give you a lot of relief in the early stages of when you're really trying to make it. Do you agree with that?
I love Liz. I love her. When I read that book, Big Magic, it was when I was really trying to make it work. And that really annoyed me. And I think it was because I was so hungry to make it work. And I think also I have a very high appetite for risk. So I am someone who can... I am someone who can go all in. I'm also privileged in the fact that I know that Exactly. And because I have the privilege of knowing that if everything was to go very, very wrong, like I had a family I could go back to, I could go move back in with my parents.
Yeah.
I had a safety net. And so for me, and because I also had a high tolerance for risk, like the fact that I was going all in, it didn't impact my relationship to my writing. Like for me, it was okay, but that doesn't mean it's going to be okay for everyone. We all have different appetites for risk. And if you know you have a very low appetite for risk, or if you have, for example, kids and it feels uncomfortable to to put their well-being at stake as you go after your creative calling, then there are so many other beautiful ways to do it that give you more time, that give you more flexibility, that take the pressure off of your books or your art, or sorry, I'm so biased because I'm an author, that take the pressure off of your creations to make money. Yeah. And so, do it as a little thing on the side, or have a job that supports your creativity. Do whatever it is you need to do, and know that your choice is right. There is no correct choice. All it has to do is work for you. And for me, I was okay with taking a high risk and going all in. And so for me, that little rebellious soul, when I read Liz, and Liz speaks about it quite a lot. In fact, she can be very conservative about not asking your art to make money. And I do have issues there because artists deserve to get paid. But I think there is something to learn from her, because we don't have to go all in all at once.
Yeah, I kind of for me, I'm not as open to risk as you are. So I kind of took that way and didn't rely on, my books and podcasting for money, at least for the time being. So, yeah, I think you should choose a path that works for you. And
yes, and know that, I think we think, oh, they did it that way, so I've got to do it that way. And it's never like that. You've got to figure out what's going to work for you. And it's so personal.
Yeah, and that requires a certain degree of self-awareness.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. And speaking of self-awareness, I really loved this chapter in your book where you talk about how creativity is a missing pillar in self-development, and that being committed to your creative hobbies and interests is crucial to your well-being. And I can attest to that because I've experienced the healing powers of art, especially during very challenging and dark times in my younger years. It really, really helped me go through all those really emotionally volatile times that I had to go through. So writing was extremely therapeutic for me, even though I didn't know what I was going to use it for. Eventually, it did translate into blogging and writing articles. But when I started, it was just purely to get, just to get my thoughts down on paper and to really make sense of what I was going through. So, I would love for you to speak more about that and how art is really important, not just for someone who's a traditional artist, but for anybody who wants to get in touch with their inner world.
A big part of this book is making sure that you finish the book and realize that art is not just frivolous decoration for this world, that the creative practice is life-changing. Really sinking you into the truth that when you make art, you are doing something incredible for your body and for your mind. And it's just not really spoken about enough. I feel like artists kind of inherently understand it. Like Celine, you understood that writing has supported you through incredible hardship, but we're not really seeing it in the same light as we see perhaps meditation or exercise or sleep. But to me, art sits beside them. It is the missing pillar in self-development. It is so important that humans create, and we do not have to create well. All the research that sits behind this declaration that I'm saying is that you don't have to be good at art, you just have to create. And we see absolutely unbelievable research that looks at how our bodies change when we create, how our minds change when we create. Like inflammation levels go down, pain levels go down. Mental health issues seep away. People with PTSD have incredible results with dance therapy. Any type of art done in any type of way, whether really well or really poorly, is going to impact you physiologically. And it almost has too many impacts. I think it's hard to understand the power of art because it impacts us in so many ways. It's not like when you take like aspirin, and it has like a certain, like, 3 or 4 effects on the body. When you take art, we see hundreds and hundreds of physiological responses. And so it's almost hard for me to really sit down and convince you of it, because the impact is so amazingly large, it's almost hard to believe.
Why do you think that's the case? Are we just intrinsically creative beings?
I think this is what we're here to do. I think it speaks to the fact that humanity and humans, we're here to make something out of nothing. It's our like godlike power. We're here to have ideas and to bring those ideas into reality. No one really does that. No other animal does that. Like, it's just us. And it's so beautiful. And I think you can see a lot of pain today because we've detached ourselves from that creator.
Yeah,
like,
Brené Brown mentions it in her book, right? If suppressed creativity metastasizes.
Oh, I'm a huge Brené fan. I'm so surprised I've never come across that. But yes, I mean, 100%. I think you see it when you look at people who are feeling a lack of agency or a lack of purpose. You can see it, I think, especially in young men today. They're not creating. They don't have that sense of agency or purpose that comes when you decide you're going to make something. Instead, we're consuming at huge rates. Instead, we're numbing ourselves with content, with games, with TV. And we're just feeding ourselves instead of creating and letting stuff go and processing and alchemizing through art. I love that you asked that question. No one's asked me that question. Why does it have this incredible physiological impact? And I think it just comes down to the fact that we are literally just here to make stuff. And it's not because we're here to be inherently productive. Like, I don't want this to kind of come across as like, we're here to produce. Like, no, we're here to make art. And it's kind of, I think that is a distinct difference.
Is there a spiritual element to it?
I mean, I feel like all the great creative teachers think so, right? We've got Julia Cameron, we've got Rick Rubin. So many people speak to this holy or spiritual element to the arts because there's something about it that's just like not quite explainable.
Yeah,
and
Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones, they have mentioned it too.
There is something about it that's divine, I think, or at least very inexplicable, maybe so innately human that we just can't quite understand it. But I think when we commit ourselves to our creativity, we do allow something a little bit magical into our lives, a little bit of the unknown, which I love.
Do you feel that as an artist, like when you're creating, do you feel like you're channeling inspiration? How does that feel for you?
I experience flow state a lot, which feels spiritual, where I'm just so deep in the story or so deep in an idea that I'm almost not conscious, like that I am in some other realm. And that is very beautiful. Zone. Yeah. But I also love to bring the conversation back to like art being very human. I think we have so many creative teachers that are like, mysticize it. And I love the mysticism. But I also think that sometimes that mysticism turns into a sort of perfectionism. And again, we elevate art as to being something of the gods. We romanticize it. And so we kind of lose the gritty, messy part of it all. And understanding that art, while it does have this like ethereal quality, it's also very human. And you're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to fail a lot. You're allowed to make art in messy places, in unideal circumstances. I think when we attach it too much to it being divine, sometimes it gets translated to I have to have the perfect workspace. I have to have the perfect amount of time per day with the right music playing. My kids can't be anywhere around me. And it's like this idealized version of what art is, when art is very human. It kind of comes back to what I was saying before about how we want this art to be like free of any bad intentions. It's like you can't make art free of bad intentions. We're humans. We're going to put all of our different intentions into our art. Like it's a messy, gritty, weird, beautiful human process.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And do you think that our humanness, which constitutes like our values, our belief systems, the causes that we believe in, or the things that we are totally against, does that infuse our art? And do consumers pick up on that? I asked that because I was talking to my partner about this, and he said that an artist that he likes, it doesn't matter what their stand on anything is, or like whether or not they're a good person in their personal life. And I feel the opposite way. I feel like I look at who they are as human beings. I look at like, how do they conduct themselves in public, and what are the causes they support? I feel like that really matters to me. So
Yeah,
what do you think about
topic.
that? Because we have opposing views about this, and yeah.
Can we separate art from the artist? The age-old question, super spicy.
There you go. Yeah.
You know, this is a topic again that I don't know. I think about it a lot, and I think about how in the modern era now we have a much closer connection between art and the artist. We know the artists behind the art, whereas back in the day, like if you go and consume, you know, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, like you wouldn't know who Michelangelo was. Like you didn't go on his Instagram and understand what he did and didn't support. Like back in the day, we had a much more separate understanding of art and artists because we couldn't know them together. But today we have the privilege because of the internet that we get to have almost like parasocial relationships with these artists. So when you figure out that this creator stands against something that or stands for something you deeply feel strongly against, it can feel very personal. And to know that that has been infused in the art can feel very confronting. And I actually really deeply respect both sides of this. It's almost a personal question, like, can you separate art and the artist? Whether it's not a worldwide, like, is it right to separate the art from the artist? Or I feel like it's a very personal question. And I know for me, sometimes I can't handle it. I'm like, I know too much about that person and I don't want to consume them. But then some other times, for some reason, that cognitive dissonance comes in, that human messiness comes in, and I'm totally fine with it. So beautiful question, super hard to understand. But when you said it, when you asked this beautiful question, I was thinking about how everything that I infuse into my books is so deeply personal and so part of my story. But when I give it away and someone else reads that book, they only really see themselves in that story. I've given them a mirror to witness themselves. They're not reading that book and thinking, oh my God, this is all Amie. They're reading that book and thinking, how do I see myself in this story? And so art is a mirror, I feel. And so instead of feeling like I give my trauma, my stories, my vulnerability to someone else, when I give my art away, I understand that I'm giving them a mirror to look at themselves at. And so I think that's almost an interesting part of the conversation as well.
That is so, so interesting. I never thought of it that way. Okay, Amie, one last question for you. You say that it's important for artists to take small, sustainable steps to develop their creative practice. Do you have any strategies that you recommend for creators who want to commit themselves to a daily practice, but also who want to remain hopeful when playing the long game?
Yes. Yeah, beautiful question, Celine. I love that. Yeah, so in my book, like I have a lot of strategies about how we play the long game, sustainable long game. Because if you want to be a pro creative, and the book isn't written specifically for pro creatives, but if you do, you're going to have a much higher chance of being very successful if you can be in the game for the longest, if you can take up space for the longest. And so I have a lot of strategies about how we can show up in small ways regularly so that we can have this like beautiful, long, sustainable career. The problem is most people don't want to hear it. Most people don't want to hear it. Artists are so obsessed with this idea of, no, I need a whole day to create. No, I couldn't just create for 10 minutes. No, baby steps, they're not glamorous. They're not going to go anywhere. But the reality is that if you want to do big things, you have to do it in small baby steps. And again, it's not a sexy sentence and nobody wants to hear it. But I write all my books in 500-word chunks. And that takes me 30 minutes a day, really. Sometimes it might take me longer if I'm really feeling stuck, but it's very achievable. And so in the book, I have a 2-week reset, which is about just getting into the practice of showing up regularly. And so that you can actually win. So many creatives say, I want to do this big thing, and they set up all these goals, and they're setting themselves up to fail. Creatives need to learn how to set themselves up to be winners. And that's how we create sustainable, long creative practices. So I have the 2-week reset in We Need Your Art, and basically it just takes you through how to put aside your ego and how to figure out systems and routines that actually are going to let you be brilliant in the long term.
Amie, I really, really appreciate you being here on the show. And this conversation has been so eye-opening, and I'm sure so many people will appreciate the gems that you shared with us today. Thank you for inspiring us to really tap into our creative prowess and share our unique voices. Your guidance is much needed right now.
Thank you, Celine. I'm so grateful for you. We need your art. Thank you for taking up space and creating in the way you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And of course, I want to let our listeners know about your book. Make sure you pick up a copy of Amie McNee's brilliant book, We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something. You can check it out on her website, amiemcnee.com, where you'll also discover more about her other books and online courses.